In this part of the guide, we're going to start making some code changes to our project to customize the Headless CMS experience, and also for you to get a feeling how the development of Webiny looks like and what are some of the customization options that Webiny supports. Now, before we start adding customizations to our project, let's make sure that we have our IDE opened, and inside there we have the root of our project, as well as a terminal window is going to be needed. Navigate to the root of the project. You can actually have two tabs in the terminal. One is going to be used to run the watch command, which once we start, we're gonna leave it to run, and in the other terminal we'll be able to execute some commands. Okay, at the time of recording this video, Webiny currently is in 541.3 release. In 541.0, we introduced a new watch command, which has a much better developer experience as it syncs the code changes between your machine and the AWS Lambda much faster. It takes about like a couple of seconds on average, and this gives you a much better developer experience overall. This new watch command is still in beta and it's not active by default, but we expect that to be default behavior in the next release. In the meantime, we want to make changes to our project by activating this beta feature. So what we do is on the Webiny project.ts file, inside that file, we want to add the feature flag section and say the new watch command set to true, after which we need to redeploy the core and the API environments. In your IDE, under the Webiny project TS file, which is located in the root, make sure you add this flag, save the file, and after that, you're going to run yarn Webiny deploy core API env dev. Right, I did that already, so I prepared my project in advance. After that's done, we can continue with the rest of the guide. I just want to add a quick note that after you activate the new feature flag, and if you try to start the watch command, sometimes you might get an error like this, where AWS complains that a specific domain doesn't exist. The reason is that when you redeployed the project, we instructed the AWS to add the specific domains to your account. Sometimes the propagation time on those domains is a few seconds, but we've seen occurrences where AWS takes about an hour as well. So just give it some time and try a few moments later and see if your watch command starts to work. If after, let's say, an hour it still doesn't work, just give us a ping on Slack and we can have a look for you. The first thing we're going to do now is introduce a new content model to our Headless CMS. Just that content model, unlike the one we created previously, this one is going to be created through code. To start, we're going to use this tutorial as a reference point, which is available on the Headless CMS section. So to introduce a content model through code, we have a pre-made extension. So yarn Webiny extension is a command that in a way scaffolds certain extensions into your project. And there's an extension just for exactly what we need, which is creating a new content model. So let's start with that. We're going to run that command in our terminal. And done. What this command did is it created a new file under extensions, models, src index.txt. So this folder structure, it's automatically added to the build system and everything. So all of that linking happened under the hood, and basically you can just focus on developing your extension from this point onwards. As the next step, we're gonna use this example content model that we have as part of this tutorial here, and we're gonna copy paste that inside here. We can replace the existing code. So let's have a look at the code in here. First, we're importing some helper methods from this package here. And in this first section, we are actually creating a new group for our content models. Remember when we showed that by default you get the ungrouped group inside Webiny. Besides that ungrouped group, we're adding an e-commerce group here. And then we're adding and defining our custom content model. Because we previously created a content model called product, we're going to use this one and rename it into new product. One very important thing to note is that this model ID has to be unique across all of your content models in the system. Otherwise, the data might not get indexed properly inside the database, and it can cause all sorts of problems. So just make sure that the model ID always stays unique. Then we're placing that model inside this previously created content model group, and we're defining a few fields. We got a name field, which is type of text, and we got the SKU field. I'm going to change this to name. The SKU is also text, and we also, in the previous one, we have some validation rules attached to it, and we have a number field. Then we're defining the layout, is in what's how the form is going to be rendered, what's in which column and in which row. And lastly, which of the defined fields is going to act as a title. So the title field is what you use in autocompletes and in the list of entries and so on. All right, so now that we have our content model defined here, we can save this file. And we can go back to our terminal. We'll use one of the windows here, and we're going to start the watch command. To start the watch command, we're going to do yarn Webiny watch API. Now, as I mentioned, this new watch command is in the beta stages at the moment, so you need to add also the -p flag and point it to the API GraphQL value. This in the upcoming releases is going to go away, so you'll be able to just use the regular watch like so. All right, let's run this command now and see what happens. All right, at this stage, the watch is running, which what it does is actually the watch command instructs our API Lambda to route all of the requests that land on that Lambda to our local machine and use the API code from our local machine to process those requests, and then again route the response from our local machine through the Lambda back to the client. All right. So with that watch running, if we navigate back to the deployed instance that we have on our admin URL, if we reload that instance, now you'll notice first of all that the instance might behave slightly slower because again, now we're rerouting all of the API requests from the Lambda to our machine and then the responses from our machine back to the Lambda. So there might be some delay happening there, but although we're on the live URL, we can immediately see our new group and our new content model being deployed. And not just that, if we go to the API playground, in the API playground, if you go to the manage API and say list content models, and run the command, you'll see that we have two content models, products, and the new product that we've just created. If we go under the Headless CMS models, we've got the two, the one that we created through the interface and the one that we created through code. Now the one, because the one that's registered through code, you'll see it has the arrow and delete disabled. You can't essentially edit it through the interface anymore. But as with the standard content model, we can create new entries easily. As well as list them in the API. There we go. And again, all of these responses are using the code deployed on our machine, but the data is still deployed on the AWS database. Just to get a sense of the performance of the new watch command, let's test one thing out. So here we got a function that lists content model groups. If we run that, we'll get the ungrouped and e-commerce. E-commerce is again coming locally from our machine from the watch command. If we were to change e-commerce to, let's say, e-commerce demo and save that, let's observe the watch command. So in 1.9 seconds, basically, it recompiled. If we rerun the API, there we go. So you see that the delay between you building your API function locally and then routing everything through the AWS, it's not a big delay. It's almost as you're building locally, just you have the full confidence that the things that you build locally and how you run them will run exactly the same way when deployed, because you're still using all of the networking, all of the triggers, events, and everything else that comes with the AWS cloud platform. To wrap up this part of the tutorial, so I recommend that you do some reading. In particular, go over this page about defining content models through code, because it comes with a lot more examples. So how do you attach multiple validators? How do you utilize the reference fields, as well as object fields, and so on. There's more, for example, with regards to your authorization and security aspect of things. How do you define something for a specific locale, or say in a multi-tenanted environment, you can create a content model through code, but then expose it only to specific tenants, not to all, or expose it to all, or expose it to just one. So there's quite a lot of control you can have with regards to this content model and controlling it through code. And then there's some best practices, like not changing the field names, not reusing the previously used field names, and so on. And finally, some FAQ to help you better navigate some other questions. One last important thing to mention about the watch command is that when you start a watch, we essentially send an instruction to the AWS Lambda function to reroute all of the requests back to your local machine, right? However, when you kill the watch command, let's do that now. So we now killed the watch command and it's no longer running. The Lambda didn't receive that kill signal, right? There's no way to send it back to the Lambda function. So the Lambda function is still routing the requests back to our machine, but our machine is no longer listening for those requests. So after killing the watch command, you do need to redeploy the API. So you run or you restart the watch, right? One of the two things. That's how the development process is designed. So yarn Webiny deploy API env dev. And after the command finishes, your API again is going to be available, and it's going to be served directly from the code deployed to the Lambda function, right? So this is just one thing to keep in mind. Essentially, the watch command is something that you run once, and it just keeps running for days, weeks on end. You don't really stop it that often, right? All right. As a quick summary, in this tutorial, I showed you how do you introduce content models through code. But more importantly, I've showed you how the development process works like when developing an API in a cloud native approach. So how those changes are synced to the cloud, how the request routing works under the hood, so that you get a feel for that developer experience. But in addition to that, this tutorial where we introduce a content model through code is actually quite a powerful one in practice, because if you design content models through code, you can version that code, so you can version the changes to your content model. If you have a multi-tenanted setup, you can control programmatically which tenants will see the content model that's defined through code, instead of recreating the content model inside each tenant manually. You can also programmatically enhance the experience of how certain fields are accessed, used, how the data is stored. So it opens a whole plethora of capabilities with regards to modeling your data schema. All right, so hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and we're going to continue with the next one.